Hi there, growers. Welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for all things soilless and sustainable. I'm Dr. Russell Sharp, and today we're shining a spotlight, quite literally, on one of the most critical components of a hydroponic setup, and that's your LED lighting. Most growers now have moved over to LED lighting, away from sodium HPS lights, metal halides, and fluorescents, and so we're going to do a deep dive into all things LED lighting. So, if you're growing indoors, the lights are your sun. And LED lights, they're the rock stars of the artificial lighting world. But are they all bright ideas, or are there some dim spots? So let's look into it, see what the technology is all about, and see where it could potentially be going as well for hydroponics. So most growers have moved over to LED lighting because it's energy efficient. They use way less power than traditional lighting like HPS or metal halides. That means lower energy bills for the same and a smaller carbon footprint. And so that's great for the economics of growing your crop. They've got a long lifespan, so most high-quality LEDs can last for 50,000 hours and more. That's over 5 years of continuous use. So you're going to make your money back on them eventually. But the key consideration there is that lifespan drops dramatically if they are dusty and they get too hot. So always make sure you keep them clean, and always make sure your air temperature is not too high as well when you're using them. You can get targeted spectrum, and this is one of the key reasons why LEDs are used. Unlike traditional lights like fluorescents and sodiums, LEDs can be fine-tuned to emit the spectra of wavelengths that you're looking for. So like blue light for veg, red for bloom, or anything like that. Whatever the latest science is saying, green for stomatal aperture and things like this, far red for stem elongation. So you can tailor the spectrum like you would be a DJ mixing the perfect beat into songs. Now, I was at the very sort of forefront of LED lighting back about 2015, and we actually produced specific bulbs that were 660 nanometers, or for red, and 730 for far red. And then we had blue lights, and these ones emitted just 1 nanometer of light. So just unlike the sort of arrays you get when you buy a grow light, I could get these grow light single lights that produce single bulbs. And I've still got a box full of these bulbs. So if anybody wants them, they're the screw-in bayonet type, not bayonet, the opposite, the screw-in type light bulb fitting, and they can be retrofitted into any normal light bulb fitting. And they're really cool for doing experiments with, where you can modify the spectrum. So if you're interested in that, give me a bell. The other thing about LED lights is they've got low heat output. So say goodbye to burnt leaves when your plants get too close to them. They run much cooler than older lights, meaning there's less risk of heat stress and no need for expensive cooling system. Some of the metal halide and sodium lamps used to have like water cooling systems around them, and air vents, their own ventilation system to stop the grow lights getting too hot. Certainly in America they were popular, not in the UK not so much because they were expensive. Now that low heat output is great for preventing scorch, and if you're growing crops that are really tall, say you're growing a 2 meter or 2.2 meter grow tens, and your crop maybe gets to like 1.8 meters tall before you harvest it, then that's great because you're going to get far less scorch in your grow room. The other reason LED lights are good is that if they're a white LED, you can see pest and disease a lot more easily than you could with like a sodium lamp. So that's a good thing. Now, obviously, all of those things have their own disadvantages. So one of the disadvantages of a low heat output is that you are not driving the transpiration. LED manufacturers didn't really realize this, that you needed transpiration for nutrient movement, things like calcium. So if you're growing in LEDs, you might need to bump your calcium, add a CalMag or something like that. Okay. Other disadvantages of growing in with LEDs, traditionally they were expensive, so there was a big upfront cost. Just like an electric car might be really good for the environment, but also for your wallet, it might be the running costs are quite low. The actual upfront costs are so high that it's a barrier to entry for most people. So the upfront costs of LEDs were traditionally very high. Now they've plummeted in recent years, and so that's been a good thing for hydroponic growers, but it's also been a bad thing for the hydroponic industry because it meant that obviously margins stay the same, but profits go down for everybody in the supply chain in hydroponics. So a lot of people have lost a lot of money on LED lights. And I think in Hawthorne in America, that's owned by Miracle-Gro, they dumped loads of lights. They just got rid of them because they weren't selling. and that would just rotate it off. It doesn't give them away or anything like that, or reduce them. So that's something to consider, that the costs have come down dramatically on LED lights. So no need to reach for your credit card anymore. There was an issue with light penetration with LED lights because the light is coming from, because they're more arrays and bars rather than one single light point, the penetration can be less into the canopy than just a single light point. So if you're growing tall crops, you might need side lighting, additional lighting for optimum growth. I'm not a big fan of side lighting, especially not under canopy lighting, because I think for most hydroponic growers, mixing water with electricals down at the lower down in the grow room is a danger, because if you're hand watering and you get water on electrical fittings, that's going to be an issue. But if you've got a system where you're not worried about that, you don't think it's a hazard, then potentially side lighting is a good option. And there's lots of new products coming on the market for under canopy lighting. There are a lot of LED products out there. Not all are created equal. And we always say in the industry, there's the cheap ones on eBay that promise the moon, but you could barely grow a weed with them. Do your research and check for ppfd and par values, not just the wattage. If you don't know what those are, we'll go and explain them what those are. But wattage is just what someone can claim is the electricity going into it, whereas ppfd and par is the actual photosynthetic power that's coming out of it in photons, we call it. Okay, so the technical side, ppfd and par or par. PAR stands for photosynthetically active radiation. I'm a plant scientist who can't say the word photosynthetically, which is a bit of a drawback. But basically, plants actually, that's what they use for photosynthesis. So it doesn't include the non-useful part of the light. So if they're putting, if the wattage is all in the green light or in the far red light, then that's useless for plants. So PAR works out just what that is. And ppfd stands for photosynthetic photon flux density, and tells you how much of that usable light is hitting a square meter each second. If it's not directed at your plants, then it's pretty pointless. So you can buy PAR meters, and your grow shop might have a PAR meter, and you can look at lights and see whether they are what they say they are before you buy them, or if you've bought them and you want to check whether their lifespan has degraded. Okay, so spectrum control is key. LEDs can be fine-tuned. Some of them can be fine-tuned. You can adjust the red to blue ratio or the red to far red ratio. You can turn on the UV or turn off the UV. So have a look at that. You might think, why is this LED light really expensive? It might be that it's tunable. It might not just be the fact that it's 1,000 watt super duper light. It could be that it's got more ability to fine tune it. You might see the word COB, COB, or quantum bars. COB stands for chip on board, and LED bars. So chip on board are the yellow, see a yellow square, and whereas a bar goes a long way. These have different spreads, intensities, and use cases. COBs are more used for like those security lights outdoors. So with bars, for great coverage, bars are used in propagation, micropropagation, veg rooms, and vertical farming. And then you might have multiple bars in a sort of sodium lamp replacement type product that you see in grow shops. So that's something to consider. There are a lot of new products that are coming on the market that have sort of smart systems, and these might be more expensive. You might see these and think, why are these more expensive? So imagine one that could sync with your smartphone. You could monitor your plant's needs as it grows. It could talk to the other lights in the greenhouse and things like that. You could adjust the spectrum and the intensity in real time. In a greenhouse, imagine if the cloud came over and it suddenly turned on. That's something that's been talked about for years. I've never seen it really used in action. You couldn't really do that with sodium lamps because if they're hot and you try and turn them on, then they don't start well. They do something, I think it's called cycling, and it really ruins the lifespan of the sodium lamps. Whereas LED lights, you just turn them on and off. There's no issue. Do it as many times as you want. You're not going to burn the bulb out. So there's some high-end systems, and obviously they're going to use AI, and they're going to stick that they've used AI, and the system uses AI. It might even be AI designed. A lot of golf clubs now. I'm into golf now, and a lot of people say, it's AI designed golf club. I'm like, oh, some great. Some chat GPT absolute vomit has made this golf club. It doesn't appeal to me. But if it can use AI to determine when's the best time to turn the lights on and prevent scorch, something like that, it could be good. Also, obviously, prices are coming down, efficiencies are going up, LEDs are getting more efficient, newer diodes are being produced with more light per watt. Even so, it's a good area of development. As I say, talk about the innovation, Internet of Things. Hydroponic controls will all talk to each other as well. So your nutrients, your lights, your pH, your humidity, potentially all talking to each other, and obviously more affordability. Other issues are that China supplies around 70% of the world's LED lighting products, at least. A lot of and that 30% will be people who've bought the diodes from China and then just made the systems around them, the cooling systems and the electronics around them. So they're not even making the LED diodes and the chips. And so the industry is very reliant on China. So the future of LED lighting in hydroponics depends on what happens with China and international relations with China. So things like if Putin doesn't sign a peace agreement with Ukraine, then Trump could get really, really annoyed with China and start putting more sanctions and tariffs on China. That's been threatened. And so that could be an issue. Obviously, if China invaded Taiwan, then, everything hits the fan there. And that's big trouble there for everyone in international trade. Taiwan make a lot of semiconductors and chips and things like that. Anything that involves semiconductors, also the amount of water and drought can massively affect supply. And what else could affect LED lighting supplies? Yeah, so basically, whatever happens to China, if trade talks go well and things like that, they could get even cheaper. And so, yeah, a lot of the companies that claim to be European or American are probably using Chinese diodes, and then they're just building the system around them, which is fair enough. But just be aware of that. If you're going to buy an LED light, then know your space, measure up your grow area and pick the light that gives the best coverage and actually fits in your grow room. That sounds stupid, but a lot of people will buy an LED light and then forget that their grow room is only 90 centimeters by 90 centimeters. It doesn't fit in. This happens a lot with metal halide lamps, where you buy a light that will fit in, but you actually cook your plants. That's less of going to be an issue. Try and check the PPFD maps or the PAR levels. Don't just go by the watts. Look for a good full spectrum light that supports every stage of the plant growth. I would avoid a purpley, pinky type product just because you're not going to see pest and disease. Might be more efficient than, if it doesn't have any of the sort of light, white, red, green, blue diodes in there that can produce white light, but the white light's useful just for growing as a human being rather than the actual plant itself. Look at build quality. Make sure it's proper heat sinks. They're important. They're the bits that are made often in America or in Europe. That's what determines the lifespan. So having a good heat build quality is very important. We had a really good quality LED light in our grow room that it was dimmable, but then the dimmers stopped working. So it was only on 100%. So we had to take that one out because going into summer, we didn't want it on full 100%. And think about warranty and support. Good companies stand behind their gear. Look for solid warranties and responsive support. Do some research on things like Reddit and other online forums and find out which one people recommend. It's a big investment, so you don't just want to jump into it. Don't buy them whilst you've had a few beers. Okay, when you think, I'll buy an LED light now. Or it's on offer now. It's only €150. Think about it. And there's always going to be an offer available on lights at some point. Someone's always got an offer on lights. If you're growing in a polytunnel or a greenhouse, then there are specific LED lights that work well. These ones tend to be more fitting around the existing structure of, say, the greenhouse, so that the shadow that they produce on the crop is less when the sun's shining and they're not needed. I'm not an expert when it comes to greenhouse lighting, but it is now widely used. If you go to Holland, you'll see a purple glow over many areas where they're using LED lighting for growing their tomatoes and cucumbers and things like this. The expert when it comes to greenhouse lighting is a guy called Tim Coates. TC Electrical, I think is the name of his company, and probably get him on as a guest on the podcast at some point next time I bump into him. I don't want to do Skype-based interviews on this podcast because I think they sound rubbish, but I see Tim every now and again at trade shows, so I'll probably strong-arm into appearing on this podcast if he's willing to. If you would like to be on the podcast and you see me at one of the horticultural trade shows around the world in this year, then more than happy to speak to you and get you on the podcast. It would be great to get some more voices on here. I've got an extra microphone, bought an extra Rode microphone to feature people. So I'll be popping into some grow shops and speaking to people. I'll be popping into some nurseries, probably go speak to my friend Tony Rowlands in Evesham, where he grows chrysanthemums and all sorts of interesting pot plants for the markets in Birmingham. So he'll be a great person to speak to because he's really knows the horticulture industry. And so, yeah, watch this space. Thank you very much for listening. As I say, if you've been recommended this episode by a friend, you owe them a beer, take them down to the pub, and share this podcast with some of your friends so that they owe you a beer as well. And so pay it forward. Thank you very much for listening. Until tomorrow, that's been Hydroponics Daily. We're going to talk about sunlight and sunshine tomorrow. Thank you.